Congressional Capitals, Part 12, the Maryland State House. In the autumn of 1783, the Confederation Congress met not in Philadelphia's Independence Hall, but in Princeton, New Jersey, inside Nassau Hall. On November 3, 1783, at Nassau Hall, the Fourth Confederation Congress delegates elected Thomas Mifflin of Pennsylvania as the fifth President of the United States in Congress assembled. A delegate to both the colonial and U.S. Continental Congresses, Mifflin joined the Army in 1775, serving as Washington's aide-de-camp and later his first quartermaster general. Mifflin's poor administration and disputes over the strategy drew him into the Conway Cabal, which sought to replace Commander-in-Chief George Washington with Horatio Gates. This eventually led to Mifflin's resignation. After leaving the military service, Mifflin returned to politics, serving in the Pennsylvania Assembly, and then was elected delegate to the Confederation Congress in 1782, which led to his election as President of the United States in Congress assembled on November 3rd. The following day, on November 4th, the delegates resolved to move the seat of government from Princeton to Annapolis, Maryland, and reconvene there on November 26th. Maryland, whose state house had been completed in 1779, offered Congress its chambers and full hospitality, a fresh, neutral seat where Congress could disband the Army and transition the Republic to a peacetime government. The Maryland State House, designed by Joseph Horatio Anderson, stood as both an architectural triumph and a civic temple. Its Georgian symmetry and soaring wooden dome embodied the young nation's balance and aspiration. Beneath that dome, Congress met through the winter of 1783 and 84, shaping the Republic's future in what remains the oldest state capital in continuous use. On November 22, 1783, John Thaxter, the secretary to John Adams, arrived from Paris bearing the definitive Treaty of Peace. President Thomas Mifflin, still in Philadelphia, realized that only a 9-state quorum could ratify it. From his desk, he wrote urgently to the governors, warning that much of the time allowed for ratification has already elapsed. The delegates of your state must attend Congress as soon as possible. As Mifflin feared, Congress could muster only 7 states when it finally convened at Annapolis on December the 13th. Without the constitutional quorum, no vote could be taken on the treaty. Then, on December 20th, word came that General Washington had reached Annapolis, seeking leave to resign his commission. Some questioned whether 7 states could lawfully receive him, but Virginia delegate James Monroe argued that while 9 states are required to appoint a new commander-in-chief, none were needed to accept George Washington's resignation. Congress agreed and resolved that Washington be admitted to the public audience on December 23rd at noon. The stage was set for one of the most profound acts in American history. On December 23, 1783, with 7 states assembled, George Washington resigned his commission as commander-in-chief, handing it over to President Mifflin, the very man who 5 years earlier in the Conway Cabal had schemed to replace him with General Gates. Washington's composed surrender of his commission to civilian hands completed the revolution and affirmed the principle of lawful government over military authority. Quorum problems at Annapolis deepened after Washington's resignation. Yet the Treaty of Paris required ratification within 6 months of its signing on September 3, 1783. By January 3, 1784, 4 months have passed, and with a 6-week Atlantic crossing still ahead, time was running out to secure the peace so dearly won. With only 7 states present at Annapolis, some delegates urged ratification anyway, arguing the treaty merely confirmed a peace already won. Virginia delegate Thomas Jefferson refused, calling it chicanery, a dishonorable prostitution of the Great Seal, warning Britain could later reject it. Then fortune intervened. An 8th state arrived, followed by South Carolina's ailing Richard Beresford, giving Congress the required 9. On January 14, 1784, the Treaty of Paris was ratified unanimously, securing America's independence. The Treaty of Paris not only secured independence, it freed American trade from British attacks. Seeking new markets, a group of investors led by Robert Morris chartered the ship Empress of China. Through future President James Monroe's committee, the official ship's papers were issued on January 30, 1784, bearing the signature of President Thomas Mifflin, opening U.S. commerce to the Far East. The three-masted former privateer sailed from New York Harbor on Washington's birthday, February 22, 1784, carrying ginseng, furs, and other goods under Captain John Green and Samuel Shaw, who would later become the first U.S. consul to China. After a successful trade at Canton, the Empress returned in May of 1785, laden with tea, silks, porcelain, and exotic wares, earning investors over $30,000 in profits and launching the United States into global commerce. That spring, Annapolis became a workshop for the nation's future. On March 1st, Congress accepted Virginia's cession of its vast western lands, transforming those territories into the first common federal property of the United States of America. In April 1784, the debate turned both westward and moral. Thomas Jefferson's land ordinance proposed dividing the first federally owned territory into future states and included a clause, inspired in part by the Quaker petition against slavery, to ban slavery and indentured servitude after 1800. The measure failed by a single vote, but its principles would reemerge 3 years later in the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, shaping the moral and political boundaries of the expanding republic. On April 26, while still debating the location of two proposed federal districts, Congress resolved to adjourn on June 3rd and reconvene the 6th United States in Congress assembled at Trenton, New Jersey on October the 30th. The question of a permanent national capital had plagued Congress ever since it was driven from Philadelphia by mutinous troops. The citizens of Trenton saw their chance to prove worthy of that honor, welcoming the resolution as an opportunity to display the city's hospitality and ambition to become the capital of the United States of America. On April the 30th, the delegates, frustrated by state rivalries, petitioned the states to grant Congress the power to regulate commerce for 15 years. The plea went unanswered, exposing the Confederation's weakness and planting the seed for a new constitutional order. On May 7th, while Congress was still debating a rotating two-capital scheme, it named John Jay Secretary for Foreign Affairs without his knowledge. Returning from abroad and intending to resume law in New York, Jay declined the office in a letter to Secretary Charles Thomson, citing the need for a fixed residence and authority to choose his own staff. On that same date, Thomas Jefferson was appointed as Minister to France, joining Benjamin Franklin and John Adams in Paris. Jefferson's appointment reflected America's growing confidence abroad, and before sailing, he entrusted fellow Virginian James Monroe to carry forward his vision to developing a system of governance for the new federal territories. That May, French migrant Charles Longchamp attacked a French diplomat on the streets of Philadelphia, and the French government demanded his expatriation. As a recent citizen of Pennsylvania, Longchamp asserted his right to stand trial in the United States. President Mifflin, alerted by French Minister Laluzerne, called the attack a violation of diplomatic privilege. Yet under the weak Articles of Confederation, Congress could only offer a $500 reward and urged the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to act. Mifflin's presidency effectively concluded with this affair. On May 29th, acting on Thomas Jefferson's committee's recommendation, Congress established a Committee of the States to manage governmental affairs during its recess as prescribed under the Articles of Confederation. Disregarding Jefferson's recommendation that the United States in Congress assembled President chair the Committee of the States, delegates chose their own leader and allowed the states to rotate members freely, breeding instability. With 9 states required for every decision, the committee soon stalled. It opened at Annapolis on July 8th, but dwindled to 6 states by August 11th. On August 19th, Secretary Charles Thomson declared the committee dissolved and moved Congress's records to Philadelphia. The failure went unexamined, but revealed the hard truth. Executive power by committee cannot govern, a lesson later embodied in the U.S. presidency created under the Constitution of 1787. Despite its failures, the Maryland State House session endures as one of the Republic's defining chapters. From Washington's resignation and the ratification of the Treaty of Paris to Jefferson's 1784 ordinance and the opening of American commerce, Congress guided the nation's passage from trials of war to the promise of peace.